Wow. Was that gloomy? Junior Hockey Advisor. We are going to get in the ditch tonight. We're going to talk about the underbelly of junior hockey. We're going to talk about the dirt, the dark. Get ready. It's going to be fun tonight. Well, it's time to bring in the other half of this. Mike Bloom. I'm Jeff Colson. This is Junior Hockey Advisor. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you today? Everything good?
I can't be better. I feel like dancing. I feel like doing a mamba. Smiling.
Oh, don't go there.
Just feel like dancing. So, hey, we got a lot to do tonight. I don't know if we're going to get through all this. We are going to discuss, get rid of the background music here, a little R&B ahead going. We're going to discuss the dark side of hockey. You and I had talked. There's an article that came out. It was posted on our discussion group. One of our members posted it about a lawsuit. And the more I read it today and the more I started trying to get an opinion on it, I thought, you know what? I'm not sure this is a good topic yet. I think it's a good, and hear me out. And this is why I was calling you a little bit ago. I think we're in a situation where you need to let that flush out a little bit more. So if you haven't seen it on the discussion group, it's a story about a lawsuit that is started or initiated against, I believe it was the CHL in general, wasn't it, Mike?
I think so, yeah.
And it claims that
USHL specifically.
Right. And it's claiming that the basic sense of it, to kind of paraphrase the whole lawsuit, is players are taken advantage of. Players are disposable. And, I can't disagree, but I can't completely agree. And I think we got to kind of take that and step aside first and maybe talk about all of the things in hockey that may not be considered fair or may be considered nefarious, may be considered deceitful, and look at some of these things. Now, I gotta paraphrase to everybody. This is not a situation where I'm trying to be negative towards our sport. Mike and I dearly love this sport. We live and breathe this sport. We bleed this sport. And, I see 99.9% of the time you are around me watching this. You're around Mike. You're watching us. We're positive about this. We always look at the bright side, and we can even do the little dance. Always look at the bright. Never mind. We're positive on this. And tonight, though, we're going to take a different approach. We're going to look at the other sides. We need your help, though. If you see other things we're not talking about, chime in. You got questions on what we're talking about? Chime in. You got comments? Chime in. We'll throw the comments up as they come along, and we'll get involved with the chat with you, and we'll enjoy this. So, are you ready, Mike?
I'm ready. I'm excited to see what you have in store for us.
Well, if modern technology works, it'll be great. But I'm not sure if I'm not sure I'm up to the task of doing this right all the way, because I am who I am and I do what I do. So I did put a little, some slides together to make it easier for us. I just got to get to them. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to pick out one thing at a time and we're going to discuss it. And these are in no order. They're in no level of severity. Some of these are little things. And by no means, even though I've got like 17 or 18 things that I thought of and brainstormed, it's not an inclusive list. There'll be things that I forgot. There'll be things that you might think are more serious. But let's just jump in and go. And while I worry about this, I know what the first topic is. And I'm going to get this up as we're going here. First topic is hazing. All right. I'll give you my opinion, Mike. You jump in or cut me off or hold your tongue, whatever you want to do. Hazing still exists. Hazing's still there. Is it different than it was 10 years, 20 years ago? Absolutely. But there's still old school programs, owners, general managers, coaches that still believe that hazing is the rite of passage. And it gets carried down. Every team is the image of its ownership, its coaches, its management. Every team. There isn't a team out there that doesn't, and if it doesn't match the coaches, one of two things happen. Either new management comes in or a new coach comes in, because 99% of the time they dovetail together. Um, what forms of hazing do I know about right now? It can be little things. It could be, when you're on the road on the bus, all rookies sit side by side while everybody else gets one or two seats because then they can lay across and actually take a nap using both seats. And if you played junior hockey or college hockey or pro hockey, you know that has existed in your past too. Um, that's a little thing. Being relegated to sleep in the tub when you're on the road on road trips, or sleep on the floor, uh, because people don't want to share a queen size bed. This is more at tier three level. Tier three level, that's usually 2 or 3 or 4 to a room, depending on who the coach is. And rookies get that. Obviously carrying the bags, that's been a big one for years. These are subtle things, but some programs still have the old school where the veterans on the team douse all the rookies players gear and water, skates, helmets, gloves, elbow pads, socks, pants, jerseys, and they skate in practice with wet gear the whole practice. That, if you've ever had to do that, that adds, 10, 20, 30, I don't know what it adds, but it adds a heck of a lot of weight to your gear. So that's hazing from my perspective. Is it still there? Yes, it's still there. Is it to the point where one of my old friends, old teammates, a couple years older than me, was at the University of Michigan prior to me getting there, and was taken out. They got him drunk. They stripped all of his clothes off and left him about 5 miles from campus. And it was big, big news. I mean, there's other teams that's happened up in Canada where a coach drops a team off 2 miles away from where the rink is for a game. The whole team's got to walk in. Or you try to stuff as many guys into the bathroom and on the bus, and put all the rookies in the bathroom and make them stay there for X amount of time. All these are hazing things. Some of them are innocent. I don't even know if you can use the word innocent anymore, but these are there at some extent still. I know from my players growing up, I should say my kids growing up, they both experienced different forms of hazing at different levels across the board, all the way into college, juniors and college. I know when I was a coach, there were players that always thought it was upon themselves to do something along those lines, to break in or to get the rookies ready. So that's my perspective on this. Mike, tell me what you think.
Yeah, I don't think I could be any further against hazing than I am. And I have that from the experience of being a player. And I also was in a fraternity in college where we actually got kicked off campus while I was there because of hazing and whatever else. And from my perspective, I think it's the stupidest thing that has like literally no value to do. Some of the things that you mentioned are more like you got to earn your stripes, when it's like the rookies have to, fill the water bottles or have to, do certain things. Like that's fine for me. I don't mind that. But, any of the other stuff, like even jamming a bunch of guys in a bus bathroom, or, getting into anything when it comes to drinking, or, some of them can be, way too much into like the nudity and all that stuff that comes along with it, that has no like advantage of getting through any of that stuff, or it doesn't do anything for the team. If anything, it really jeopardizes your credibility as an organization and the leadership group of that team or whatnot. So I couldn't be further against that kind of stuff. I think it's ridiculous, and it has tamed down, but like you said, there's still programs that have been in the news, recently getting busted with that kind of stuff. And, it just, to me, it's ridiculous. Like, it's just stupid stuff that shouldn't happen anymore.
Yeah. Hey, you actually handled your solo pretty good there. Jumped on and gone. So, okay. So that's one. I'm going to pull up the screen share here, and we will look at this. Tell me when you see that. Oh, okay. It's not going to let me do that. That's fine.
Anticlimactic.
All right. Yeah, I know. That's terrible. So the next one, billets. A lot of stuff there. And there's a couple comments coming in. Yeah. So I'm going to keep the things that are being mentioned so far. Yes. Both of those or all three of those so far are going to get mentioned. But let's talk about billeting in the negative side. Mike, do you want to start off on this one? Jump in if you feel like I'm, taking too much control of this, because I want to make sure your fresh points are out on this too.
Well, what's your, bringing up billeting? Are you talking about like some of the pitfalls that happen?
Absolutely, the dark side, the creepy stuff, the underbelly,
Yeah.
the you come home and all the lights are off and your billet mom is sitting there with a candle under her face.
Okay, let's keep it clean here.
No, that was creepy, not dirty.
It was going somewhere.
Where she was glowing in the dark and just looking, spooky. No, I'll give you a few of my part. There was a billet situation in our league where, and it may still exist. I'm not going to mention teams. I'm not even going to give you which division, but there were 6, 7, 8 kids living with one billet family, and the billet family collected a premium to live there. And they were 2 to 3 to a room, big house. There wasn't a problem with, I don't have a problem with 2 in a room. And under certain circumstances, 3 in a room. But their breakfast was the dad put oatmeal on in a big vat, and you went and you got oatmeal, just kind of like being in prison and getting gruel. You got a scoop, and that was it. At night, it was pasta or rice, and to the point where the kids were actually going out and going through drive-through and getting a chicken patty on a sandwich to bring home to put in their meal, so they got some protein. Or they would get a to-go box with the pasta or the starch, and taking that out to a fast food place and getting a cheap piece of meat to throw in there too. That's insane, but it went on. It was going on for years this way. And they had their own bathroom as a player, but once again, it was 6 to 8 guys sharing one bathroom in a house. That's more of a dorm, and they weren't given lunch. And there were times, and this is something I've heard many a times, where and this is usually when it's a single parent, single kid that's billeting players, where they will actually give the kids, the billet kids, the hockey players, one meal, and then they'll order DoorDash, or they'll bring in something, or they'll make another meal. I'll give you a fun one with my daughter when she was billeting in Canada for juniors. She was in a situation where they had one kid in the family, parents and one kid, one daughter. And they actually would cook a real nice like steak dinner, and they'd make macaroni and cheese and hot dogs for my daughter and sit at the same table and think nothing of it at all. And their position on it was, you're not paying the bills. You only pay us enough to feed you this, and we're gonna comply with what the billet rules are. So if they had a steak dinner, she sat there and watched with eating hot dogs and macaroni and cheese, and this went on the whole season. And at first it was kind of funny, as a dad, I was like, hey, but towards the middle and the end, especially when you'd meet this family in the stands for games, it got to be downright cruel. They're drinking soda and they make Tang for her or water for her, and it just bizarre. It was almost like one of those Disney movies with Cruella, or and then there's always the little girl that's mopping the floors, looking for it was Snow White, isn't it? Is that the one?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember which one it is, but so that's one of them too.
Cinderella, maybe.
What's that? Cinderella.
Maybe it was Cinderella. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody will jump in and tell us which. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, I'll take a different angle. You talked about more of like the player situation. If anyone is here, considering being a billet, if you have a teenage daughter, please do not billet any of the players. You just put yourself in such a bad spot by doing that. And there's just so many stories where, that doesn't turn out the way you had hoped. And you just don't put yourself in that situation. So, you got to figure these kids are young, and, they're curious, and there's a lot of time that, they're milling around the house and whatnot. It's just not a great situation to put yourself in. So, avoid that if you can. So that's the one thing that I hear over and over and over again when kids are in that situation, I always think, why in the hell would you put yourself in that situation? And time and time again, they do. So if you're listening, don't do it.
Fully agree. Fully agree. Fully agree. Um, it just reminds me of the Rob Lowe hockey movie. What the heck was that called?
Youngblood.
Youngblood. A lot of the things we're talking about are things that you'll see in some of the movies out there. If not, some of them that have become urban legends in the hockey circles, they absolutely happen. But let's get on to a different one because I want to try to fly through these. I've got like 18. I'm not sure if we'll get through them all, but we'll get through as much as possible. Next one, contracts. Mostly when I say contracts, I'm talking about tier 3 contracts where you're actually paying to play on a team. There's so much to talk about on this issue. And one of the comments that already came in is and I'll actually put the comment up. It's from somebody that's watching us on Facebook. And the comment is there's another junior hockey Facebook group where the group owner claims that not all USPHL players pay the same amount, i.e., the better players pay less than everyone else. Any truth to this? Mike, you want to go first or you want me to?
Go ahead. Take it.
Yes, it's true. It is against the NCAA rules. I know this site and I know where they got the information. They got it from our videos and some of our past content that we've put out. The NCAA, and this is the website you need to write down, it is College Hockey Inc. It explains all the rules of how contracts or agents, when I say agents, family advisors, and this is mostly done via family advisors. And it could be a straight out offer from a team. Hey, you come here and you pay 50% less because you're a good player and we want you. And good players beget other players. That is a true statement. If I have a superstar on my team or a really strong player, that will, entice other players to come join that team because they've got a really good player, the leading scorer in the league, yada, yada. And at some levels it's, that guy's got a commitment already, a D1 commitment already or something like that. But you cannot, if one person gets a discount, the discount has to be offered to everybody. So if somebody on that team is playing for free has to be offered to everybody. If somebody gets 10% off, 10% has to be offered to everybody. It's right in the rules. Now, here's the problem. Here's one of the dirty little secrets. The NCAA really doesn't have time or the wherewithal or the resources to track down these situations in junior hockey. They've got their hands full with all the things that are going on right now with the portals and with the name, image, and likeness in basketball and football. The NCAA's got their own issues right now, and this is verbatim from them. Hey, Jeff, I see what you're saying when I bring this up, and I've had direct conversations with the NCAA. We just don't have the resources to track that down. So in other words, it's not directly affecting a current NCAA athlete. They're not going to track it down, and they're not out there looking for it. And if you complain to the NCAA, I hate to say it, but good luck. Maybe if they keep getting complaints, they'll do something about it. Now, some of you will take advantage of it. Some of you will say, hey, that's fine. If somebody wants to give me 50% off, the tuition's $10,000 and I'm only having to pay $5,000, I'm going to take it. I can't tell you if that's good or bad or right or wrong. In my ethics, it doesn't work, but everybody's different. I'm not going to judge you if you do that. However, my world is that if little Jeffy here does that with his kid, I'm the first one the NCAA is going to catch. Okay. And that's the way I look at the world. The first person to hammer and the one they'll make an example of is me. And I never want to have my kid in a situation where I'm going to be the example. So that's the way I'm looking at that right now. Mike, anything to add?
I don't think so. You hit that one out of the park.
Well, there's other conversation. We could do a whole conversation on, look at the bells and whistles. But, the one thing, Mike had a real good, direct point about, billets and what he thinks there. Mine is read the contract. Take the time to read it. 90%, and I'm not kidding. I used to be a tier 3 owner. I've owned 3 different tier 3 teams. I would say when I put a contract out, I'd wince because I'm married to a lawyer. My daughter's a lawyer. And when people just take the contract and go, where do I sign? I go, hang on. Let's go through this. Here, let's go through this first paragraph. I'll paraphrase it for you, but I want you to really understand what you're signing. That is me. It shouldn't be me, force feeding it on somebody. You really should want to read that contract and spend a little bit of time with it. So,
especially if you're playing in an independent junior league, because there's less,
oversight, right?
Guidance and guidelines and everything. I've had a couple players in my past that went on to play juniors, and they thought they were going to be playing on a specific team. And once they got over there, they got moved down to the lower team. And at that point, we're like, I didn't agree to this, and wanted to come back and play U18 for me. And in order to get out of the contract that they signed, they had to pay that club $13,000 to get out of it. And then they obviously had to pay for playing for me for that year. So that was a very expensive lesson for them. But it happened. And I don't want to say it happens all the time, but it does happen, periodically, every year.
So let's jump on to another one. There's, like I said, and some of these overlap. Some of them you'll go, hey, you kind of mentioned that before. Filler players. And maybe some of you don't know what a filler player is, and this is at the tier 3 level. Actually, filler players can happen all the way up to the NHL. And what a filler player is somebody that fills out the roster where the coaches, either through bias or through conscious decision, don't have any real reason to want the kid to play. There's no incentive for him to play. He's there because the coach wants to run 3 lines, but he needs a 4th line. Does it happen? It absolutely happens. It happens in almost every tier 3 league across the board. I mean, I can name 20, 25 teams right now that use filler players. They pay the bills. They're there in practice. Do they get power play time? No. Do they get a regular shift? Most likely not. Do they play on the PK? No. And all this time, the player thinks he's investing his time for next year. Oh, I just gotta wait it out till next year. I just got to put my time in. Next year, I'll move up into a better role, because that's what they've been told and taught, and that's what they see in the NCAA ranks. That's what they see in even the pro ranks of the sport. The longer you stay on the roster, you keep moving up, and they don't, because the coach never intended on moving the player up. Mike, anything?
Yeah, and I think filler players in your example can go even further, where it's not a guy that's in and out of the lineup, but it's literally a guy that's practicing the whole time. So, some of these rosters, you can have 30 guys on the roster. You could have 35 guys at some point. Even if you're rostering 25 or whatever it is you have to get down to, you still may have an extra 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that are just solely there practicing. And there's no way they can even get into the game because they're not on any of the protected lists. But they're paying the bills, and they're obviously out there for practice to try to help develop. And you hang that carrot over their head of next year you're going to be able to move up into a bigger role and whatnot. And I'd be curious to see how many of those kids actually do.
Yeah, and to counter what you do as a parent or as a player in this situation, you got to get into social media. You got to look at the roster. Maybe you see a lineup sheet and you see what their 4th line is. Reach out on social media. Watch their games on tape. Almost every junior team is on Live Barn, or they're on Flow Hockey. They're on Hockey TV, whatever they're using, or maybe they just video their games on YouTube. But watch the games. Figure out who the 4th line is. See how they're being treated. You can see how many guys are on the roster, and see if those guys are getting ice time, see if they're part of it, because it's incumbent on the person paying the money to make sure the product is right. And Mike's point is valid. You cannot expect, there's several leagues that have no oversight from USA Hockey. You really don't have a governing body to turn to with some leagues, and you just got to be careful with that. I'm not saying I wouldn't play in those leagues. I would just know what, buyer beware. Know what you're getting into before you actually do it. So, all right, next topic, trades. Go on, Mike.
Well, I think when it comes to trades, I don't think people actually understand they have more power in the situation than they actually do. But there are plenty of horror stories where, you know, a kid is in 2 or 3 different spots in 1 year, because for whatever reason, either he's valuable enough to acquire more assets, or he's got some issues off the ice that people think, oh, I'm going to be the one to fix them, and he realized, nope, let's keep them going, to the next place. And obviously that's not a great situation from a league perspective or for that individual family and that kid's perspective. But I know that there used to be the Wild West. I think with the USA Hockey guidance and most of the junior leagues and even in some of the other ones, I think they're getting better when it comes to making trades and sending players elsewhere than it was in the past. So you probably have a lot of like good examples from when you were doing this in years past. Maybe not as many. I'm living in this world for maybe 10 years. You're living in this world for like 30 years. So it's different.
Yeah, but I've got some recent ones, and some of this is, between the United States and Canada. I tend to see more old school coaches in Canada than I do in the United States. I tend to see more old school coaches that still play by the rules from 1960 and 1970 in their mindset, and that's not. I'm not making a positive or negative statement there. I'm just trying to state what I see. Now, I'll give you one from my family because I'm willing to throw it out there. When my son went to the AJHL as a rookie, coming out, he played 1 year of U18, and then he went to the AJHL. The coach and the general manager sat him down right away and said 2 things right off the bat. If you're looking for money, we'll give you a couple names of teams that may pay you, but we're not paying you. That floored me because I'm coming from what I consider squeaky clean USA Hockey juniors, where pay a player to what that, but that's the underbelly. That's the dark side. I'm not going to blow anybody in on, what programs did or did not do that at the time, but there were teams, and there were teams that had communal cars where there was a team car. All those things are a little iffy. Maybe not so much in Canada because the NCAA isn't, breaking NCAA rules aren't as much of a situation there, especially guys that may have played in the WHL or played in the OHL first, where there was a lot of compensation in like ways like that, and it was legal. But in my son's situation, our advice to him, mom and dad, was get up there, work hard, keep your head low, get up there, work hard. So he'd actually started out really good. First 10 games as a defenseman, he was one of the leading scorers on the team. He was doing great. And they met weekly with him. The team had a professionalism to him. I still love this team. This is not a knock on the team. But what happened was they met weekly with the players, and he asked Adam what he thought about his playing time, and Adam said something instead of keeping his mouth shut. And as soon as he said something about playing time, and in fact, I think he brought it up because there was a large showcase, and there was several prominent D1 schools there that asked, that let Adam know they were coming up and wanted to watch him play. And he got benched in a regular rotation. Okay, there was rookies that were cycling in and out of the lineup, and it was his turn. So it was nothing malicious, but Adam said, hey, I'm one of the leading scorers, why? And they said, okay, we'll take care of the problem. He was traded the next day. Boom, just like that, because it's a business and because it's old school. The mindset isn't, let's work through this and communicate. Hey, look, we gave you a chance. We gave you an opportunity. You questioned the way we do things. Hit the road. And once again, good program, very naive kid. Maybe we gave him a little too much slack to have that, to make his own decisions in those cases, but he was down the road the next day. So trades can happen with just a slip of the tongue. And some coaches have very, very small, let's change that. Some coaches have very large egos. And instead of talking about the other anatomy, we'll talk about the ego. And, if you brush them the wrong way, in your innocence, you might be a 17 or 18 or 19-year-old kid. You haven't dealt with these adult topics where, negotiation and communication and how to resolve problems. These guys are masters at it. These guys have dealt with hundreds of players. This may be the first time you're sitting across the table with somebody you have to build a relationship with and try to work with, and you're not skilled. You just don't have the skills yet. You don't have the skill set. Thought process, Mike.
Well, I think the big distinction there to call out is the fact that you were talking about, a Canadian Junior League and how things are operated there versus the U.S. Because in the U.S., if all of a sudden you get traded on a whim and you say, well, I'm not going to report there, it blows the deal up. Like that deal doesn't go through. So, I guess the differences are, between countries and the way that the leagues are set up, because, that scenario with your son would have never happened in the null. And if it did, it would be because the kid, just didn't understand that you do have some leverage in that situation too. You don't see that as much.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not there, because I've seen it in every league. Okay, absolutely, I've seen it in every league. The other part of the underbelly of this is be careful who advises you. An advisor, instead of your kid, can open his mouth, and you could get blackballed for the rest of the time you're playing junior hockey. An advisor can say something or take a role that he's got the power to come in and negotiate for you, even if you don't know about it. So it's extremely, extremely important to know what your advisor's role is and really manage that role so that they're never speaking to the team without your approval first. And even sometimes when you have said, hey, I don't want you talking to anybody unless we talk first, they still might do it. So, how you figure that out is on your own to keep that straight. But man, oh man, I've seen player after player basically ruined because their advisor steps in without any knowledge. There was an advisor that's still in the business that was listed as a player director for an organization, not in the null. And he had 4 or 5 guys he recommended to the team, and he was calling up the coach and going, hey, we need to change this power play. We need this guy and this guy in the power play. And the coach is going, what are you talking about? Where did you think you ever had the right to say anything about how we play or anything? So that goes along with the trade issue, because advisors can screw up and get you traded just as fast as anything. Of course, kids can get traded because they don't have effort. They have a bad attitude. There's a lot of things, but I'm just talking about things that are, not always under your control or easy to see. Yes, Mike? No, Mike? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've, beat the dead horse on that one.
Okay. Just to add, and I know I've missed so many of your comments because the timeliness, we'll get back to some of them as we go. So few advisors are confident. Do your homework, people. Many times advisors are clueless and will be a detriment. Yeah. There are good advisors out there, and there's strong advisors out there. And that's why you ask a lot of questions. And we've covered this ad nauseum on how to get to them. Let's get to coaches. Got a lot of things to say on coaches. Coaches can be the darkest part of your whole experience, or they can be a bright part, or they could be a non-factor. You always want a kid to come back and say, oh man, I'd play for that guy forever. That was my favorite experience. That was my favorite coach. He worked me hard, but man, we got a lot out of it. But let's look at a little bit about some of the things that can happen. And we've already covered some of them, sitting players that are filler players, putting them in the stands, trading players, all that stuff. Yeah. But, one of the issues that you can look at right away is biases, and some of the biases that come along with coaches. There's racial bias that comes into play. There's economic bias. Hey, this is tier 3. That kid's dad's got a lot of money. Maybe he'll buy an advertisement in the program. Maybe he'll sponsor the team for a road trip, or whatever the case may be. There's natural biases, and that's when a coach just sees a kid that looks like it's effortless to him and decides, that's the kid he wants. Oh, sorry about that, Mike.
That's me listening.
Mike's picking his nose, and I put him back on camera there when he thought he had a break. There's all kinds of bias. I would say that confirmation bias, where a kid makes one mistake on the ice and the coach is going, see, you made that mistake. That's why you don't play more. And there's 14 or 15 examples of other kids doing the same thing. But since the coach had a talk with your kid and your kid doesn't get ice time, he's on the fourth line. He does it once in a game, and the coach is going, yep, see that? There it is on tape. I want to show it to you. That happens all the time. Although lines 1, 2, and 3 may have done it 4 times a piece during the game. So that's where the conversations with the coaches and when you meet the coach for the first time, introducing some of these things and discussing them without calling him out are important. You have to try to get to the point where you can angle conversations to see what kind of biases he's bringing into the game across the board. The focus on winning, putting so much emphasis on winning that he runs 2 lines. He runs 3 lines. The same 5 kids are on the power play all the time. The failure to grow talent, the failure to put time in with lower level players in the team. That's huge with a lot of coaches. A lack of coaching, understanding advanced systems, trying to get better, learning. One of the first things I would always ask a coach is, hey coach, what's your philosophy on coaching? What kind of systems do you run? What do you still participate in seminars? Are you doing it just, and these got to be done in a positive way. You can't call a coach out when you're first meeting them if your kid's going to that team, but you can strike up a conversation, and a lot of coaches like to talk about themselves. So, if you strike it up the right way, they're just going to roll. You have to find a way to shut the conversation down. And I would say that the bias issue is so big because they can carry so many different biases in that you really have to know, go in with a game plan on how you're going to discuss this. And hopefully you're doing it on a Zoom call. You're doing it on a face-to-face when you're talking to the coach. But, I would never, ever want anybody out there to go to a team without having a conversation with the coach. Now, if it's a USHL team and you feel like I'm going to that team no matter what, then maybe that's not as important. Anything below that, I think you should absolutely try to get a conversation with a coach before you go there. Thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, the one thing also about coaches that drives me nuts is when, they talk about how, they're going to advance their players and, they get all these different kids into school, if they're a junior coach and they can get them there, and they never pick up the phone and they don't work on behalf of their players to actually connect those dots. They just kind of sit back and wait for, teams to come to them and ask about certain players or whatnot. Because it's such a disservice to the kids on their team that they're not doing outreach themselves to, drum up exposure and conversation about their own players. And that happens way more than it should. There's a lot of coaches that, just focus on coaching their team and doing video and, they live like in the moment, and then they're not thinking about, well, I should be connecting with this school about this player, or, this kid wants to go here, let me see if I can get one of the coaches to connect with them, and doing all that extra work because you're doing it from, on behalf of your players to try to help them advance and move on. And it is a ton of work, but there's a lot of coaches that aren't willing to do it, or they'll put it onto the player and say, you reach out to these teams, and if they have any interest, they can call me. It's like, that's just not as effective, So that bothers me.
Well said. Next topic. Homesickness. It's an issue, and I'm going to tie 2 together. I'm going to tie homesickness and support together. So we're going to knock off 2 at one time. Homesickness is real. Players go through it, especially, it doesn't have to be, you live in Rochester, New York, and you're playing in Alberta and you're homesick because of the distance. The distance could be 2 hours. The distance could be very small, but when the walls start closing in, the coach communication slows down. Maybe you're a rookie and there's a little bit of hazing going on. You feel ostracized. And you haven't, found that friend on the team yet, or the friend away from the team yet. Homesickness is real. It's a big, big issue. Some teams do a great job of team building. They do a great job of having the captains aware of the situation and looking for it. I mean, when I coached, I'd meet with my captains daily and I go, okay, who do we have to worry about? That was the first question I said. Who do we have to worry about? Who's given any signs? And we actually talked about the signs with the whole team. Here's the things you look for. If somebody looks depressed, if somebody is starting to, go away from the team and, do things by themselves, There's all kinds of little signals there. But if your team doesn't have a strategy to support, and that's the other thing too, if you're one of those filler players on a bad team with no support and you're getting homesick, I mean, that's a death spiral. There's no other way to put it. That's a death spiral. You're putting yourself into all kinds of, mental health issue areas that, it's really hard to come out of that. And it's really hard to see a positive come out of it. Now, most kids can make it through the year, but many kids can't. They basically, they pull the chute. I mean, some ask for a trade and some just say, I'm done. At the tier 3 level, there are kids that'll go home for Thanksgiving, or they'll go home for Christmas and just decide that they're not going to go back and go back to that team. So have you seen any of that, Mike? Have you dealt with that at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, again, these kids are moving away. It's just like kids that go to college and they're not playing any sports, but they're moving away to go to college. They get homesick too, which
Oh,
is
absolutely.
normal,
The only
so
difference is that at high school, you're done with high school. A lot of junior players are younger than that college kid.
yeah.
And so that's the part I was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Roster size. We already kind of killed that. But that's the dirty part of the game, is this whole roster size and playing time at tier 3. Does every team do it? No. Are most teams equitable? Yes. Most teams try to be very fair. And, even in my situation in the past, I had a guy that was a clear number 25 on my team. But when we sat down with the parents and we sat down with the player, we said, you're coming in as the 25. If you want this spot, I can't promise you anything. If that's what you want, and he desperately wanted to be on the team, I can accommodate, but I can't promise you anything. Now, we did end up getting him in games. We got him dressed for a few games during the year. But the beginning of the season, we signed him up with a clear expectation that there was zero coming his way, and that we had kids that would take that spot knowing that, but if he wanted it, he was first in line. So, it happens all the time. Playing time and roster size, it's a bitch, and it's a dirty part of the game, but it happens.
Yeah. And that's where also doing your homework on the league and what their restrictions are, because if you play, and this mostly happens at the tier 3 level, but, anything that falls under the USA Hockey umbrella, you can only have 25 guys and then 23 guys and things like that. And they may have a couple other guys that are there practicing and whatnot in case of injury or whatnot, but it's not like they can have 35 guys or 40 guys that, or they're just collecting all this money and that's how they can cut deals with, guys that are paying half or aren't paying at all because they've got other guys that are kind of paying for them that are, bopping around and whatnot. So you hear those stories more frequently at certain clubs and certain leagues, and, you just have to do your homework so you're not in that situation.
When I was coming out of the Marine Corps, I think I had 3 or 4 months left. The Division I team in San Diego, there used to be a school called USIU, United States International University. Top 20 hockey team, one of the first on the West Coast, a good, solid program. The guy that coached the team was Brad Buteau. He replaced Herb Brooks at Minnesota when Herb Brooks went to the Olympic team. So that was their street cred. When USIU got him, that was a huge deal in hockey at the time. Little did I know they got him because he got bounced out of Minnesota for doing the same thing he did at USIU. I went out for a skate with the team, and right or wrong, I don't know if it was within the rules or not back in the day, but I was skating with the team 3 or 4 days a week, the college team. And I thought it was an open tryout at all times. There were 40, 42 kids on the ice. And what he'd do is he would give out 1/8 or 1/10 of scholarships. So every kid could say he was on scholarship. So he had this massive amount of kids that he always had out there. And so that happens at the college ranks too. Not as much. You don't see that drastic extreme now. At least I haven't heard of that in years, but that cost him the Minnesota job, and it probably cost him others too. Nutrition. I only got 2 things to say about it. We already talked about nutrition with the billets. As much as you can to dig into your billet situation and your billet family, and even asking them about, what's the daily meal plan? How, what do you supply? What don't you supply? What's the variety of meals? All those things asking him. But here's the one. Here's the junior one. Here's the tier 3 junior one. You get done with a game, the coach and the bus driver want to get on the road so they can get back. and they throw 5 pizzas in the back of the bus. They literally walk on and just start handing out pizza boxes. And normally it's cheese pizza. They don't even have the dignity to put a pepperoni on the pizza. Okay. That's a reality. Knowing that, you ask the question. So on the road, how do you eat? Most teams will say, hey, look, we stay at hotels that always have a breakfast buffet. That's huge. That is absolutely great because the kids can load up and they can take a banana and stick it in their pocket, or a yogurt and stick it in their pocket for a snack. And the team, usually most tier 3 teams, don't supply lunch. They supply breakfast and dinner. Lunch is on your own somewhere. And, as long as you know the rules, it's fair. But if you're on a team that's just giving you pizza, you're not eating healthy. You're not recovering right. And, it's incumbent to either accept that, which most situations you're going to accept it, and know how to counter it by picking up a sub before you leave the rink, packing a little cooler on the overnight trips so you've got food for that, first night or the second night too. And you'll see a lot of kids that have those little, whatever the top brand coolers are now. They carry those around, and that's why, food sucks on a lot of teams. Just got to get used to it. Mike?
Yeah, and I think the quality of the food is one conversation, but the biggest thing is not feeding them enough. If they're not getting enough food, that's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
They're both issues, but that's the biggest issue.
Yeah. And there's better ways to do it. It doesn't cost much more. And this is me preaching. It doesn't cost much more to order Olive Garden, the big trays, have those trays right outside the locker room. So as soon as the kids are done showering, they go out, they get a plate, they can fill it up with pasta, salad, breadsticks, and at least they're getting, a much more nutritious meal than just a plain pizza. So,
in some cases when you're on the road, the road or the home team, like their billets or other people will get together and they'll make pasta or tacos or whatever. So the team on the road, when the game is over, because sometimes the game doesn't end until 10:30, 11 o'clock by the time they get out of the rink. So it's not easy to grab food on your way back to the hotel. So that organization will kind of set up something, or the billets will set up something to feed the players on the away team before they go back to the hotel. And then, that team will reciprocate it when that program comes down to play them at their rink. So there are things that organizations will do that kind of help that situation also.
Yep. And better junior teams will also have a little training table set up in the locker room on the road or outside, where they got a bunch of apples. They've got bagels and peanut butter and jelly. They've got things that the kid can make a quick snack right after the game, and have food before dinner. So if the game, even if the game ends at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, they can still grab a couple things. They've got loaves of bread. They've got, maybe some ham and salami out there, whatever the case. And they've got drinks. They've got the Gatorades, the waters, the replacement fluids. So, either way, that's something to be considerate. You should consider when you're making all these moves. Hey, look, tonight we're talking about the dirty side of hockey, the underbelly of it. We're in the ditch tonight. We're not saying that this is every team. We're not saying this is your team. We're giving you real life examples and real life situations and things that you have to be concerned about and look for, and almost a checklist of things just to know. You're probably in a situation where you have to accept some of them. But the more you know, the more educated you are. Next week, we're going to talk about summer scheduling, and we're going to talk about scheduling all next week. So, hopefully you'll join us next week. And remember, like and follow us. You can do that on our Facebook page, Junior Hockey Advisor discussion group. We also have a page. We'd love you to be a part of those, and also YouTube. Go to Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube. Continuing down the list, Mike, injuries. Oh, this one drives me nuts. Injuries. Do you want to start, Mike? Because I'm going to go on a rampage on this.
I'd rather let you go. That way you don't want to jump over what I'm saying to get yours out.
Have a good insurance plan. Okay. That's the best. The best thing is, don't let your kid get on the road without having, your own good insurance. No matter what the team is telling you, oh, we've got a doctor at every game. Oh, we've got a trainer. And if your kid is hurt, take the time to actually find out what the injury is in more detail than what you're hearing from your kid. Okay. If that means that you've got to say, hey, look, I really want you to go see, I want you to go to the clinic, or I want you to go to the emergency care facility that's down the street or the hospital, get everything checked out. I've seen horror stories with when we had 3 different junior teams at one point. One of the teams was on the road. A player got hit in the thigh. It looked like a thigh bruise. It became something called compartmentalization, I believe it is, where the sac that the muscle sits in, the muscle expands out to the point where there's damage done that's like can be permanent. Fortunately, this was with a family that the family was traveling on the road to watch the son play, and the dad was a doctor. So when they went into the emergency room, he knew what he was looking for. Ended up being surgery right away off of what looked like a bruise from our coaching staff. Coaching staff assessed it. The trainer assessed it from the home team as just being a bruise. So, this is the one thing. It's like when we talked about support, when we talked about understanding, there's some old school guys out there. When I say old school, it's tape a Band-Aid on it and don't complain. That mentality still is there. You see it all the way up through the NHL. We pride ourselves as a sport of playing through pain, playing through injury, playing when other sports, stop playing. That's great if you're getting paid $5 million a year. But if you're playing juniors and this is something that could, put a permanent injury, prolonged situation in your way, in your path going forward, you're going to get very, very little support from a lot of teams. There's a big section of teams that just go, you're injured, you're off. Why don't you go home now? And when you get healthy, come back and we'll get you back in and get you skating again. That's the mentality. Now, don't get me wrong. In many cases, the injury, it is best to go home and it is best to spend time around your family and recuperate. But it's the mentality out of sight, out of mind. And the team is going to go on. This is a business. The team is going to go on regardless of you if you're hurt. It's the way it is. Some teams, are compassionate. Some coaches and general managers and owners are very compassionate. Others aren't. You are responsible to find out, and this is where it just takes so much to do your homework. And it doesn't always mean face to face with your team. You could be asking other teams, other players, what do you know about that team? What do you know about that coach? What do you know about, or social media? Follow a kid that's hurt. See what he's doing now. Is he at home? Is he starting to say, basically talking shit about the program now, which you'll see? Or is he still supportive and still feel part of it and still supporting the team as he's going through a short, medium, or long-term injury? Mike?
Yeah, I think the thing that bothers me about organizations is a lot of times if a player gets injured in that game, they're there to treat it, with whatever trainers are there and whatnot. But then after that game is over, there's like no follow-up, so the kid's on his own now to go to whatever, if it's got to go to the clinic or he's got to schedule an appointment with like an actual doctor to be seen or whatever else. A lot of them, it falls short and it falls on the family who could be, 3,000 miles away or whatever to try to figure out where do we go and who do we call and what are the doctors out there, or it's on the kid. And that's what you really want to try to find out. And just by asking an organization, they're not going to tell you that, but that's where you got to maybe talk to some people who have had kids that played on that team before or, different things, because I got to tell you, like, I'm not a parent, but as a parent, if my kid were to get injured and I'm not a jump in the car and get there, distance, that's really stressful to try to figure out what to do next with your kid and things like that. Especially if it's like anything with their teeth or, obviously, something that needs like attention right away. That's something that is not all organizations are created equal. Let's put it that way.
And I don't know the right answer to this because some of it's just, not practical. If a kid, God forbid, breaks his leg in a game, the whole team can't stay overnight in the emergency room, get another room while they wait to assess the kid and, get him back on track and figure out what the game plan to, heal him and get him home. And that's not practical. But a lot of teams don't have a game plan. A lot of teams don't have, okay, if a player gets seriously hurt and he's got to stay when we're on the road, how are we going to handle that? Is the assistant coach or the head coach or the trainer going to stay with the player and make sure that they both safely get back? Does a team send somebody out with a car to pick the player up the next day? This is that support thing. Do you just leave them and say, okay, we'll get somebody here to pick you up tomorrow? Now that kid's there completely alone in a foreign city. That's a really hard thing. So once again, this is just talking to people and talking to, your kid can get a lot of this information without even really trying if he just matches up with the right people on the social medias. Players talk about this stuff all the time, so that'll help a lot. Next one. This one's a tough one to talk about, and thank you all for staying with us. We've had a great group tonight, a great size. This one is alcohol and drugs, alcohol and the vices. Mike, you got to take this one first because I've been doing them all first. You take this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about because you hope it never happens, but that, for the most part, these kids are, there's a lot of idle time. Just like in college, there's idle time. When you're playing juniors, there's idle time. And if you don't have a good leadership group or, the billet program isn't strong to where they're kind of looking after each other also, or, maybe there's a billet that the family travels a lot. So that's like kind of an open house and then it becomes a party house. And, there's a lot of things that can happen in junior hockey when it comes to that, that type of thing that, can spiral out of control. And, in some cases, these kids are, drinking for the first time, or they're drinking in that type of quantity for the first time of like a big rager, or you bring in the hazing and, other stuff into it. And it's, it's not a good look and it, can turn bad. And it does happen, from a drug perspective. You'd like to think that that's less likely because these kids are, committed athletes and, they're a little bit more concerned about what's going into their bodies than, maybe just a normal kid or whatnot, but it still happens. There's a lot of hockey careers that have ended because guys got down the wrong path. And, juniors is a spot where it can be the end of it, because again, there's idle time.
I would take the stance on this that 100% of the teams have alcohol issues. 100%. You've got kids that are 20 years old. You've got kids that have, been in juniors for 3 or 4 years. They feel compelled to live the lifestyle. Now, it might be one kid. Some it might be half the team. Some it might be the whole team. In the AJHL, I've experienced teams that have a happy hour where the coaches go with the players because the drinking age is either 18 or 19. And I'm not kidding. I went up to visit my son, and this was only a couple years ago, and the team had a happy hour, and the coaches sent over pitchers of beer for the players. Not even, and it's a raise the glass and hey, after games, the coaches and the players may not be together, but they'd be at the same institution, the same bar. That's I don't even know if that's an extreme, but that's one example. Alcohol. I would say that 10 to 20% of the teams or the composition of the team have a dope issue, a pot issue. Once again, that's a different mindset from the way we grew up because, pot was that pure athlete, but now it's so accepted in some markets that, it's just, they look at it differently. It's just a different thing across the board. People are rattling off all kinds of, I'm getting comments in different ways right now from this one's a sensitive one. I know, but
I wish you were showing some of these.
Not that one. No, yeah. But the idea is that you're not going to get away from it. Educating your kid, the way I kind of handle things as a parent, and I made a lot of mistakes as a parent as far as junior hockey goes. But I tried to check in at like 10 o'clock every night, a little phone call, a little text. What's going on? Where you at? Or I'd FaceTime from time to time where I'd actually have to, get him on. Even my daughter, just get the face on, and you can tell a lot by the squinting of the eyes about what's going on, and hey, Dad, it's okay, we got to talk, one of those things. But that didn't really come till he was 20. It didn't happen at the earlier ages because the coach was right there with him. Hey, FaceTime with your dad. How you doing? And I'm not kidding about that. That was really going on at the time. So that's all I got to say. Just be prepared that there's nothing squeaky clean out there. There is nothing. Some coaches have if I don't see it, I don't have to say anything about it. And they can, preach a good game, but then they also bury their head in the sands, and only if it becomes an issue. Other coaches check the billet house. They stop by the billet houses. They get to know the billet parents and make sure they're leaning on them to do the right things. Billet parents can be just as bad. I've seen issues where, the ones that get me are the 50-year-old, and I'm stereotyping, but that's the way it's going to be because I've seen it more than once. The 50-year-old divorcee or widow that gets into the billeting world, and this is not cliche like the movies, but they want to be the fun person. They want the kids to hang around in the pool in the backyard, or the pool table in the basement. And so they're very liberal on the allowing of alcohol to be in the house. So usually if you see 3/4 of your team hanging out at the same place all the time, you might want to question that and find out why they're hanging out there all the time, because that's usually something to do with it. So,
or you might have a kid that's local to the area, and they're at their buddies' houses or their own house, not their billet house, things like that. But your kids are going to get exposed to drinking and drugs and things like that when they play junior hockey, just like when they go to college. If they had not gone to juniors and they just went to college, they're going to be at parties or fraternity parties or whatever, and they're going to be exposed to it. So it's just being prepared for that.
It's probably the same ratio. It's probably the same type of ratio you see, maybe less. The college, if I recollect, college, maybe the dope was a much higher percentage than what you'll see in junior hockey. But we're not advocating this by any means by having this conversation. We're just pointing it out that it does exist, and you have to be prepared as a parent for that. Two more real quick. One is lack of technology. The dirty side of it is every team will say, oh yeah, we've got video. And then they don't see video all year long, or they'll see video once, 2 or 3 times during the year. And then when they're watching it, they're just watching the game. It's almost like the substitute teacher. The assistant coach rolls in, brings the TV in the locker room, puts the game on, and they just all sit around and watch the game, which doesn't really do anybody any good. Then it becomes just it becomes a vanity piece. Oh, did you see that hit? Oh, you see that? And they're watching for their shifts versus trying to learn a system. So I would say that if there's one thing you can jump into, and I've asked this question many times, and I've had this question asked of me, can you show me what you do with video? Just, can you show me? And there are teams that have, literally instantaneous video cut. When the kids are on the bus halfway home, they're already getting emails with all their game shifts, and there's technology to do that. And the assistant coach, one of the assistant coaches or the head coach, are actually putting notes on it. Sometimes there's a live chat going on the bus on the way home with lots of interaction. Maybe you're not sitting with the coach, but he's commenting and going back and forth with 5, 6, 8 players at the same time as they watch their film and watch their shifts. So, but especially at tier 3, there's a lot of people that say they have video, but really don't actually break down and do anything with video. So be prepared for that. Mike?
Yeah, I think the best, when you were talking about it, I think the best way to sum it up is there's a lot of lazy people, right? When you're, any day job that any of us have, there's coworkers that we have that, just kind of mail it in, and then, they don't take it as serious, or they don't give 100% every day. And I know it's hard to give 100% in your job every day, but there's a lot of people that are lazy, that are doing hockey as a career, and they're content with where they're at, and they're not going to go above and beyond, and they're not trying to get to a higher level, which means they're not willing to grind and do all the things that are necessary to make your players better and win and advance and develop and all that stuff. So you got to know what type of program you're getting into, because if you just ask them, like I talked about with their plan for injuries and and what they have. If you ask them, everyone does video, and they probably do video, but not everybody does video every single day. Not everybody breaks down not only their own film, and what they're trying to do to improve or to execute, but then also is breaking down the opponent's film and their tendencies and habits and how you want to attack. And, merging the two together on a week-to-week basis is a lot of work, because you got to clip those films and you got to watch those games. And there's a lot of people that either don't have the technology to have it done for them and aren't willing to do that themselves, or they're not willing to do it themselves even when they're being provided it, because you actually have to sit down with your team and you have to explain all these different things, and they're just not willing to do it, and that's a problem.
I agree. Couldn't have said it better. Listen, folks, we got 2 more. We'll get through these quickly, but throw your comments in. What do you think about this list? Has it been helpful? Do you like this? Is it too uncomfortable to talk about? Are we getting too close to the bone on some things? Do you think we're full of, are we full of shizzle on this?
Well, that is true. We are full of that, but that's every episode.
That almost sounds like schnitzel. I did take that trip to Germany for 2 weeks, and man, there's some good food over there. I enjoyed the hell out of that trip.
With your lederhosens?
I didn't get a pair that would fit me, but I thought about it because I wanted to dance around with lederhosen on and, leather pants on and see what it was like to.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Okay, 2 more. And like I said, these are in no order, but please throw your comments on. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what you if you gained anything out of this. Discipline. This is a big one. Discipline. No matter how you look at the sport, your discipline is most likely not going to match the team's discipline. If you're severely, if you're a hard ass parent, the team's not going to live up to your expectations for the most part. If you're a super liberal parent, you're going to feel like the team's coming down so hard on your kid. And discipline is not equal from player to player. Now, sometimes it's a logical situation. I'll give you an example. First line player and a fourth line player break the same rule. Fourth line player sits a whole period for it. First line player misses 2 shifts. And right off the bat, you're like, that's not fair. That's not fair. Well, the fourth line player only gets 2 shifts a period. So he sat 2 shifts. First line player sat the same 2 shifts. But as a parent, you'll never see that and understand that. But that's on the positive side of a coach that's really proactive and is really trying to do the right thing and is trying to, be equitable on his discipline. But there are coaches that with their bias, it's recency bias. You took another penalty. See, you took another penalty. Now, the kid may have not taken 3 penalties in a row, but a month ago, the coach talked about him about taking too many penalties. And as soon as he takes a penalty, he's sitting in the stands the next game because he's taking too many penalties. Where Johnny on the second line takes 2 penalties every game, and the coach basically skates him meaning doesn't do anything with him, blows by the issue or overlooks the issue. You've got a lot of coaches out there that aren't, educated in the process of managing a team and managing people. They might be good on the X's and O's. They might be super good on recruiting and bringing the right players in, but it doesn't mean that the discipline is going to be fair or equal or even logical in many cases. So once again, just be prepared for this and know how to see it. And sometimes as a parent, you're going to be biased right off the bat yourself that they're picking on your precious little son. Okay, that's the case. You might be biased that the coach never sees the other kid do it. Okay, that you might be right on all those things. The one thing I would do is whatever your son is telling you on the phone, take 10% of it, knock off 90% right off the bat for the first time he mentions it. Now, if it's continual, then there might be a problem there. But most kids will embellish at first with their parents, trying to get their parents on their side for the argument, even if they're wrong. And we buy in as parents. We buy in. Oh, geez, I can't believe. What did you say he did? Oh, he sat you for a whole period? Oh, my God, I got to call that guy right now. Refrain from that, but know that there might be some truth to it, and there might be some where that smoke is, there might be some fire. And there's a lot of coaches that are just really shitty at understanding how to discipline and manage a team. Mike?
Yeah, I don't know if I have too much to add to that other than, I hate when that happens, but it will happen because there's always, bias and there's, as a coach myself, it's like you go into the game and there's, your star player turns the puck over 2 or 3 times and, they don't miss a shift. And then your fourth line guy goes and delivers a pizza to the other team and, they get sat for the next 3 or 4 shifts. And it's like, you look at it and you're like, well, what the hell? And, sometimes people can't see the 5 or 6 or 7 good things that the one player did that's affecting the team in a positive way to negate some of the negatives that they had. And that's why they're continuing to get that shift. And, the other player hadn't had any positive things and just the one negative. So you gotta, like, every scenario is different. But you gotta kind of have some patience with that and see if it was a situation that played out maybe in the wrong way, or there's a pattern with how the coach handles things. And hopefully that's not the case. But to your point, some of these guys, they don't know how to they're not used to managing people. They're used to coaching hockey, or they used to play hockey and then reached a certain point and then became a coach. So
Yep.
They still may be learning how to manage this whole thing and what are some of the unintended consequences to some of the decisions that I make. And, that plays out over time with experience. And, some of these guys don't have it, especially if it's like a lower level, junior team, a tier 3 team. Some of these coaches are, in their 20s and they just got done playing. Like they don't have all the experience that some of these other guys do to know what to do in these situations.
My son's first null assistant coach was 2 years older than him.
Exactly.
He only had 1 year as a video camera guy for a junior team under his belt, and then he's a null assistant coach. And that's a true story. I'm not going to rat out the team or rat out the situation, but absolutely, you just you got to realize some of these people are especially assistant coaches, they're in the learning mode too. They're in the learning mode of trying to learn how to, and some of them, what they think and perceive an assistant coach is supposed to do, I got to come in and yell at the players in between periods. That's the least effective thing in between periods. If your kids don't know what they're doing, your team doesn't know what they're doing, and you're going to try to motivate them between periods, and that's where you're going to change everything, you haven't done your job for the 4 practices you had that week. That's just the bottom line. Last one. First of all, thanks for the comments, folks. Thanks for sticking with us. We've had a great audience tonight. Once again, if you want to throw comments out there, one of the questions that came up is this available? Yes, this will be available on all of our platforms. It'll be on our Facebook platform. It'll be on our YouTube platform right away. Last one. Mike, have you ever heard of Good Old Boys? Is there a good old boy network out there in hockey?
100%. I mean, and that's just not in the junior world. That's from the NHL down to youth hockey, in whatever state or city you're in. There's a good old boy network where there's people that have been, playing together and they became coaches together and they became, administrators together and, things like that. It's the same at every level. And, they try to help each other out, because that's their group, and for the most part, it works to, keep consistency within, whatever level it is and whatnot. But there's a lot of issues that also get played into that with preferential treatment, not only for each other, but, certain programs or certain players that are connected with the good old boys system in some way. And for that, it's got its negatives to the good old boys thing too.
Yeah, the good old boy network absolutely exists. To some extent, you and I are part of a good old boy network, positive or negative, because of who we know in the game and what circles we run in inside the game. Understanding that and handling it professionally is is what you need to do, but not everybody understands that. Here's some examples of some good old boy network things that I've seen that I don't like. Good old boy network. Coach goes to the other coach after the game and says, "Hey, number 5 on our team is really close to being the scoring leader this year. I'm going to throw on 2 or 3 assists. You saw that, right? You saw that he got an assist on that one. In other words, manipulating the score sheet and getting a buy-in from the other coach, because in some leagues you have to have, before you add to the score sheet, both teams have to agree or acknowledge them. Others, the teams can do it individually without having to get a buy-in. Some it's done only by the league. The teams can prompt for that extra assist. The other one is all-star games, all league teams, showcases at the end of the year where players get rewarded for things like league MVP. A lot of those things, a coach can get his team to get his buddies on other teams to buy into whatever he's selling. A lot of it's almost bullying, where you get a coach that's a personality. He'll actually just start saying things that the other coaches, he expects them to fall in line with. I think the one thing that bothers me with the good old boy network is, parents, there's a lot of chances for parents at tier 3 to go talk to other coaches, to talk to other teams inside and outside your own league. And there's opportunities to talk to advisors. And this is where I caution you at all times. Don't bitch about your coach or anybody to other people. Keep it to yourself. If they even tried to pull that information out of you, they could be, it could be a setup. The coach could be coming to the advisor and going, "Hey, ask them what they think, what's going on. Get their opinion. Are they bitching behind the scenes because the coach is looking for a scapegoat on a player? He's looking for a reason because he's already got it out for a player." Don't trust anybody with your negative thought process. Keep it to yourself. You have to, because there is a good old boy network. It's vast. It goes across all leagues. It doesn't just, it's not like there's this dark, there isn't a conspiracy out there against parents. There isn't a conspiracy out there, but you just never know who they talk to on a daily basis. There's some coaches that talk almost every day, and advisors that are, an old buddy, and, word gets around. So be very cautious of that. What thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to add, but you definitely want to be careful what you say, because everybody probably listening has heard that hockey's a very small community, and really the only people that can get involved in hockey are people who had played it. So there's so many people that I played with that are now in the coaching world, and then I've coached now for over 20 years. So there's not only, people that I've been coaching with or against that have moved on to higher levels, but there's kids that I've coached over 20 years that are now moving on to higher levels. So just like, they do that whole Kevin Bacon, like, what is it, 6 degrees of separation or whatever. When I look at my own, like, coaching tree or playing tree and how many people I'm connected with, it's vast. So, and that's just me. And then you connect me and you, and who do we have in common, and whatever. And we've, before we even like really knew each other and we started to get to know each other, it was like we connected on so many different levels and people and areas we lived, and all this other stuff. And we're generations apart as far as like from a playing standpoint.
Generations, maybe
generation. Generations.
Let's freaking not go to generations. I did not play in World War II.
Well, pretty close. But my point, remains is that we're just talking about you and I. When you start splintering now, out from there, it is a very, very small community. So you got to be careful what you say, because people will try to use that against you, or it'll get into the wrong hands, and it's not a good situation for anyone.
And we've all stumbled on this in the past. Every coach, if you've been involved with this game for, the 1 or 2 years that Mike's been involved, or the 30 plus years I've been involved, you'll say something that it might be mild that comes back to you. It might be major that comes back to you, and you get egg on your face, and you learn by it. But if there's a piece of advice, is just keep your mouth shut. If If somebody tries to goad you into a conversation, a negative conversation about somebody that's in this as a professional, an industry professional, just smile and nod and say, oh, I haven't really had that experience with him yet, because it's not going to get you anywhere positive to jump on the bandwagon in those situations. So, um, awesome. Tell us what you think. Let us know what you thought of this conversation. We will break this up when we put this on YouTube. By the end of the week, I'll have this by chapters so that all 17, we did 17, Mike. We did 17 different topics tonight and got through them all. We'll make sure we break these down, clean it up a little bit, and try to condense it a little bit. But I'd sure love to see your thoughts. I'd sure love to know what your comments are on this. And if you got another one, if you agree or disagree, put it on there. We'd love to see in the comments. Do you agree with what we were saying? Do you disagree with what we were saying? The other thing, too, is do you have something to add? Is there something we missed that maybe we should talk about in the future? Mike, I know I kind of threw this at you tonight. Thank you so much. You did a great job, and you added a lot of insight that I didn't even think about, so I appreciate not only did you go into this blind, but you really were able to still contribute. That was very helpful. Thank you. And thank you for everybody that stuck around. We had one of our larger groups of the year on. And with that said, we'll answer the one question. Mike, why don't you grab that question that's on the screen right now?
Sure. So it's a junior versus college hockey. So ACHA, I would assume, D3, D2, or D1. What are the chances, or what chances does a player have as a walk-on tryout without invitation? Do you think that's college hockey from a club level, or do you think that was?
Why don't we answer it across the board and answer both club and NCAA?
Yeah, so I think we did an episode where Mike Hermbrock kind of came in from Illinois State and talked about ACHA, college hockey and whatnot. And for them, they have D1, D2, and D3 right at that same university. A lot of universities now at the club level are starting to have that same model. And if they don't have all three levels, they might have, two of the levels. So it might be D1 and D2 or D2 and D3. So a kid that's playing, for sure at the AAA level, they're going to have an opportunity to leave right from, youth hockey and go right into a school and play club hockey. Some of the D1 schools at the D1 club schools that are at like the high end of the D1 clubs, so the UNLVs and, Minot State and, some of the big boys that were up there this year, they are still getting their players from juniors. And that's, some of the NAL guys, the NCDC guys, the tier 3 guys. So it's not as easy to just leave when you're done with high school and go and make one of those teams. But typically they'll have like a D2 or a D3 where that's maybe your starting point and you can kind of work your way up. So you don't have to go the junior route necessarily to play club hockey. It's becoming more of a thing at the high end of the D1, like I said, but there's probably 600 available teams from D2 to D3.
And there's a huge, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I was just saying that I think D2's got like 300 teams and D3 is pretty close.
200.
So, what do we got balloons going up for?
Did you do that?
Yeah, no, I did that on my side. Happy birthday, Jeff.
Good. It's my mid-season birthday. Nice.
Yeah.
Check that out. That was pretty cool. I didn't even know what button you hit to do that. So,
back to the point is going to play D2 or D3 club. If you're playing AAA or high level AA or some of the high school, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, like you can go and play club hockey right away.
Yeah.
To go and play at the NCAA level, you have to play juniors unless you're playing, one of the high level prep schools out east. And, then you can sneak into D3,
and that's still rare. That's still rare. And the logic behind that is even if you're a great player coming out of AAA, coming out of prep, coming out of high school, and you want to go play D3, it's super rare because a D3 coach will go, yeah, you're great, but you're 165 pounds. You've never been around alcohol. You've never lived on your own. I've got this guy over here that's 21 years old. He weighs 220 pounds, same skill level you're at, same academic level you're at, but he's already got the drinking out of his system. He's not, he's very independent, can handle himself. He's mature and he's big and strong. So equal, that kid was, your kid, and that kid could be the same athlete. It's just a different part of the timeline. And the D3 coaches will always grab the mature, bigger kid that's had a few years of seasoning under his belt. And when I say that, that is the rule statistically, and there's very few anomalies to that. Even the other thing I'd add to this is the advantage if you're going to step out and don't want to go to juniors and you want to go to ACHA club is this is the time of year where the club programs are, and you've seen a few of them on our discussion group. They start advertising their skates. You can go out and test the waters. You can skate and meet the coach. You can go and have a tour of the facilities, tour of the academic side, the campus. You can do all that with these 1 or 2 day skates they have where they play a little round robin. They make it fun. It's a recruiting tool for them, but many programs do that. So you get a taste of the water, and then before you even apply to the school, where you stand. If there's 3 teams, they slot you in on the second team. They slot you in on the third team. Wherever they slot you in, where you fit. The only thing I would say that may be a little bit contrary to what Mike said is if you're going to wait to the fall and just try to walk on, that might slide you down to a lower team if there's 3 teams. You might have the ability to play on the first team or the second team, but they're already full. And these teams do put a little time and effort into better programs, put time and effort into building their rosters, just like a NCAA team will. So, and if you're talking about walking onto an NCAA team, it is not going to happen if you don't have juniors under your belt at the D1 level. And at the D3 level, it would be extremely rare, 1 in 1,000 kind of thing. So, all right. If you don't have any more questions, folks, we're going to call it a night there. Woo! We got through a lot. I appreciate everybody sticking on and following through with us. So we'll catch you guys next week. Once again, I'm Jeff. That's Mike. And we'll talk hockey at the junior level next week. And remember, it's going to be summer scheduling. We're going to talk about what you should be doing with your spring and summer. We're going to talk about what you should be doing with your time off or your time on, depending on how you look at it, where you should be going, and some of the things that you can be doing. I shouldn't say should. I should say that the opportunities that are out there for you. And Mike's going to do all the homework. I'm just going to sit back and have balloons fall all around me and listen.
Is that because I missed the pre-production meeting today?
Oh, you really irritated me by missing that meeting because I was all excited about this list, and I wanted to make sure I went over it with you and see if you had. My wife had some insight on this list. My wife wants to start doing some videos for us.
Well, she's the brains behind this operation, so that does not surprise me one bit.
She's the vice president. I tell her that all the time, and we don't have a president. So
that's true.
Awesome. All right, folks. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Take care, Mike.